Welcome to Ancient World Studies. My name is Dr. Raoul McLaughlin. This channel is hosting a broadcast from Belfast Classics in conjunction with the Classical Association in Northern Ireland. The sources concern the death of Mark Antony and Cleopatra.
Following the sea battle at Actium, the aftermath of defeat. Source: Caesar, Civil Wars, Book 3, Passage 112. Now, there is an offshore island at the Alexandrian harbour called Pharos. It is connected to the city by a narrow roadway, like a bridge. This pier is 900 feet long on the seaward side, and it was built by former kings. On the island, there are the houses of the Egyptians and a settlement about the size of a town. There is also a tower of great height, a work of most wonderful construction. It is called by the same name as the island, Pharos. Because the harbour entrance to Alexandria was narrow, there was no entry for any ships without the permission of the inhabitants of Pharos. And any ships that went a little off their course, either through the carelessness or through rough weather, the people there might plunder them like pirates do. Source: Plutarch, Life of Antony, Passage 69. Antony wandered about with two friends, a Greek writer and speaker named Aristocles, and a Roman citizen called Lucilius. Now, I have written about Lucilius before. When he was at the Battle of Philippi, Lucilius pretended to be Brutus to let him escape. Now he surrendered himself to the pursuing enemy instead of Brutus. Because of this, Antony spared his life, and Lucilius remained faithful and dedicated to Antony right up to the very end. Well, Antony had the benefit of endless solitude at Alexandria. He gave up the city and the society of his friends. He constructed a stone pier in the sea at Pharos, the lighthouse at Alexandria on the island, and built a house for himself. He lived there, exiled from everybody, declaring that he was happy to imitate the life of Timon of Athens, who lived in the 5th century BC. Antony believed that his experiences were like Timon's, because that man had also been wronged and treated with ingratitude by his friends. He therefore hated and distrusted all mankind. Source: Plutarch, Life of Antony, Passage 71. As for Antony, Candidius personally brought him word about the loss of his land forces who were still at Actium. And he heard that Herod the Jew, along with various legions and cohorts, had gone over to Octavian. Other rulers were deserting him, and he had no influence beyond Egypt. Then it was as though Antony had gladly given up hope, perhaps so that his worries would go away as well. He left Timinium, as he called his dwelling out at sea, and he returned to the city. He was welcomed back into the palace by Cleopatra, and they once more enjoyed lavish suppers and drinking bouts and the distribution of gifts. Antony wrote the name of Caesarion, Cleopatra's son by Julius Caesar, on the ephebos, a record of young adults undertaking formal military training. Antony also conferred the toga virilis, the one without a purple hem, the plain toga of manhood, on Antyllus, his own son by his late wife Fluvia. All of Alexandria celebrated this event with festivities and feastings for days afterwards. Antony and Cleopatra now disbanded their famous society, those of inimitable life-living. It was a cult of what they called unsurpassed existence. In reality, a feasting and drinking group dedicated to celebrating the god Bacchus. But instead, they founded another. This was the Society of Partners in Death. But it wasn't any less expensive or extravagant, and anybody who enrolled themselves were known as they who will die together. But in the meantime, they would pass the time in a series of delightful suppers. But meanwhile, Cleopatra was gathering a collection of all sorts of deadly poisons. She tested them to see if they were painless by giving them to prisoners already under the sentence of death. She noted that the faster the poison, the more pain it caused. Mild poisons were just not quick enough. Every day she made a trial of these venoms, watching as they were set upon people. After she had tested almost all of them, she found that the bite of the asp, a venomous snake, induced sleepiness. There was no spasm, nor groans, but just a gentle perspiration on the victim's face. The person lay still and relaxed as their mental faculties dimmed, despite all attempts to wake them or restore them. And in death, they were like those who are soundly asleep. Source: Pliny, Natural History, Book 21, Passage 9. The Greek doctors, such as Callimachus, have written monographs against the wearing of harmful chaplets, that is, flower wreaths, upon the head. They specify which flowers are damaging, because amid the gaiety of drinking parties, people aren't aware of strong scents. As an example, take the wicked cunning of Cleopatra. While preparing for the war that ended at Actium, Antony became afraid of being poisoned. He would not take any food that hadn't already been tried out by another person, a taster. He was even afraid of food handed to him by Cleopatra herself. She played on this terror by poisoning the tips of the flowers in his chaplet wreath, and then she placed it on his head. After a while, as the party got wilder, she challenged him that they should drink their flowers. Who in such circumstances would suspect deceitfulness? So, having gathered the fragments from his wreath into his cup, Antony started to drink. But Cleopatra put her hand out to stop him and said, "Look, Marcus Antonius, with your new craze for food tasters, I'm the woman you seem to be guarding against. If I thought I could live without you, I wouldn't lack the opportunity or the means to do away with you." Then she had a prisoner brought in, and she ordered him to drink from Antony's cup. The man died on the spot. Source: Dio Cassius, Histories, Book 51, Passage 7. But to return to Antony and Cleopatra, they were preparing to wage war in Egypt, both by land and sea. They were calling for assistance from the neighbouring tribes and the kings who were still friendly to them. They were also getting ready, if necessary, to sail to Spain and use their vast resources of money to stir up a revolt there. They were even planning to change the base of their operations into the Red Sea. But, without exception, the foreign princes and their peoples refused to help Antony. And while these negotiations were going on, Quintus Didius, the governor of Syria, got the Arabians to burn the ships that Cleopatra had in the Red Sea. These had been built for a voyage to the Indian Ocean. So that their plans for war might go unnoticed for as long as possible, they also plotted to deceive Octavian, or in some way, or maybe assassinate him. They sent messages to him, carrying peace proposals and bribes of money to his followers. Meanwhile, unknown to Antony, Cleopatra sent the royal throne to Octavian, along with the golden crown and a scepter. This was meant to show that she was offering him the kingdom. She hoped that even if he did hate Antony, he would at least take pity on her. Octavian didn't answer Antony, but he accepted Cleopatra's gifts as a good omen. In public, he sent threatening messages back to Cleopatra, saying that if she would give up her armed forces and renounce her sovereignty, he would reconsider what should be done with her. But secretly, he sent her word that if she would kill Antony, he would grant her a pardon and leave Egypt untouched. When Antony and Cleopatra each heard the demands from Octavian's envoy, they sent word back again. Cleopatra promised to give Octavian large amounts of money, and Antony reminded Octavian of their friendship and kinship. He defended his involvement with the Egyptian woman and reminded Octavian of all the romantic and youthful adventures they had once shared together. Source: Dio Cassius, Histories, Book 51, Passage 8. Then Antony dispatched a third message with his son Antyllius, and a lot of gold. Octavian accepted the money, but sent the boy back empty-handed, again with no reply. On 3 occasions, Octavian sent Cleopatra many threats and many promises. Yet even so, he was worried. Cleopatra and Antony might hold out together and either prove superior by their own efforts or set sail for Spain or Gaul or destroy their vast wealth that he had heard so much about. Cleopatra had collected all her wealth in her tomb, which was under construction in the royal grounds. She threatened to burn it all, and herself as well, if she failed in even her slightest demands. So Octavian sent Thyrsis, a freedman of his, to say many kind things to her, and in particular to tell her that he was in love with her. Well, since she thought it was her due to be loved by all mankind, Octavian hoped that she would do away with Antony, but keep herself and her money unharmed. And so it was. The death of Antony. Source: Plutarch, Life of Antony, passage 75. Once again, Antony challenged Octavian to single combat. But Octavian replied that surely Antony had many other ways of dying than that. So Antony realized there was no better death for him than in battle. He decided to attack at once by land and sea. At his evening meal, the night before the battle, he feasted more generously than usual. They say he ordered his slaves to pour out more for him and told them he couldn't be certain if they'd be doing the same thing tomorrow. They might be serving other masters, while he would be lying dead, an embalmed body, and nothing. And then he noticed that his friends were weeping at these words. So Antony said that he wouldn't be leading them out into battle. He was not seeking safety or victory. He was just seeking an honorable death for himself. But during the night, about midnight, while the Alexandria was quiet and downhearted with fear and expectation of what was coming, they say that suddenly musical sounds were heard. It came from all sorts of instruments, accompanied by a crowd, shouting. There were loud cries of drunken Bacchic revelry and bawdy satyric leaping about. It was as though a group of unruly, rowdy people were leaving the city. They seemed to take a route through the middle of the city, towards the outer gate which faced the enemy. At this place, the uproar became its loudest, and then suddenly dropped away. Silence. Some took this for a sign and looked for a meaning. They thought that God who Antony had attached himself to and always likened himself to was now deserting him. Source: Plutarch, Life of Antony, passage 76. At daybreak, Antony personally posted his infantry on the hills in front of Alexandria. He stood quietly and watched as his ships put out to sea to attack the enemy. He expected to see grand actions being accomplished by them. But as soon as the crews of his ships were nearing Octavian's, they saluted with their oars. When this salute was returned, Antony's crew changed sides. All the ships were now united into one fleet, and turning their prows towards the city, they sailed towards it. No sooner had Antony witnessed this than he was deserted by his cavalry, who went over to the enemy. Source: Plutarch, Life of Antony, passage 76 continued. After being defeated with his infantry, Antony withdrew into the city. He called out that Cleopatra had betrayed him to the very people he had waged war against for her sake. But she was afraid of his anger and his madness. She fled for refuge into her tomb and let the drop doors, strengthened with bolts and bars, fall down. Then she sent messengers to tell Antony that she was dead. Antony believed the message and asked himself, what was the delay? Fortune had taken away his only remaining excuse for clinging to life. He went into his room, unfastened his breastplate, and placed it to one side. Then he said that he was not grieving to be without Cleopatra, for he was about to join her. No, he was grieving that a general such as him had less courage than a woman. Now, Antony had a trustworthy slave named Eros. Long before all this, Antony had appointed Eros to kill him if it ever became necessary. Now he demanded that Eros carried out that promise. So Eros drew his sword and held it up as though he would strike his master. But then he turned away and he used it on himself. As he fell at his master's feet, Antony said, "Well done. Well done, Eros." He said that Eros wasn't able to kill him, but he had taught him what he must do. Then Antony ran his sword through his own stomach and dropped down upon the couch. But the wound did not kill him. After he had collapsed downwards, the blood ceased flowing, and he came round. He cried out to those standing by to finish him off, but they ran away from the room. He lay there, writhing and crying out, until Diomedes, Cleopatra's secretary, came with orders to bring him to her in the mausoleum. Realizing that Cleopatra was still alive, Antony hurriedly ordered his servants to lift him up. He was carried in their arms to the doors of her sepulchre. However, Cleopatra would not open the doors. She appeared at a window, and she let down ropes and cords. Antony was fastened to these, and Cleopatra hoisted him up, helped by 2 women, and these were the only people she had admitted into her tomb. Those who witnessed this say there was never a more piteous sight than Antony, smeared with renewed blood and struggling with death, being pulled upwards on ropes. He stretched out his hand to her, even as he hung insecurely in the air. But the task was not an easy one for the women. Cleopatra could scarcely manage, and with the strain showing on her face, she leant out with clinging hands to pull up on the rope. Those standing below called out encouragements to her, and they shared her agony. When she had got him in and laid him down, she stood over him. She ripped her garments, and she beat her chest, and she tore at her own body with her hands. She wiped some of his blood off with her face, and she called him master and husband and imperator, general. In fact, she almost forgot her own troubles in her pity for him. But Antony interrupted her weeping, and he asked for a drink of wine. Either he was thirsty, or he was hoping for a faster death. When he had drunk, he advised her to look out for her own safety and try to do things without disgrace. He told her that amongst all of Octavian's companions, she could trust Proculus. Antony also said that she should not grieve for him because of this, his final misfortune, but should count him happy for the good things that had been his. He had become the most renowned of men. He had won the greatest power, and now he had not been shamefully conquered. He was a Roman who had been defeated by a Roman.
You have been listening to a broadcast of source material concerning the death of Mark Antony. Part 3 of this series concerns the fate of Cleopatra and Caesarion, her son with Julius Caesar. Like and share this video. Follow the links below to access the ancient sources. Thank you.